Hello and welcome to another MX5 parts video. I am down here at Deep Car Autobodies just outside Sheffield, and they are a bodywork specialist paint shop, and we're here today to talk about bodywork, rust repairs and how MX5 parts can help you sorting out the bodywork on your MX5. Now, tracing back to the original story of the car, you probably know that this was created as a homage to the classic MGBs and Alfa Romeo Spiders and things like that the team behind the car all owned and loved. But like all classic cars, they have their issues, they weren't very reliable, they rusted and all that kind of thing. So the original Mark 1 MX5 was created as a kind of modern interpretation of a classic roadster with all the things that they loved about their cars, but reliability and all the rest of it that we appreciate in our modern ones. Unfortunately, they were a little bit too faithful in this whole recreating a classic car thing, and yes, unfortunately, Mark 1s, Mark 2s, even Mark 3s have begun to rust authentically in a classic car style. I mean, it's inevitable really. My car here is about 30 years old. You know, they've been on the road a long time now, salty roads, all that kind of thing. It's just an inevitability that rust does happen. One of the problems with bodywork repairs is that you can have what looks like a fairly presentable car. As you can see from the front, mine looks pretty good, you know, there's no dents or scrapes, panels aren't rusty or all that kind of thing, and you can have a car that you think looks pretty good. And the idea of addressing rust and all that kind of thing seems a lot less fun than perhaps souping up the engine, doing suspension, or some of the other things that we've been talking about here on the MX5 Parts YouTube channel. But it's important because you know, the car structure needs to be sound, and rust obviously does not look pretty, and eventually it can kill what's otherwise a perfectly good car. One of the problems of doing bodywork is that you only really tend to discover the extent of the job required once you've committed and actually done something fairly dramatic like pull the car apart, as you can see here. Now, the rust spots on MX5s are pretty well understood. Most people know them quite well, and they tend to be around this rear quarter here, the wheel arches, and in the sills here. Now, because the rear quarter has been removed from this car, you can actually see those sections pretty well. What tends to happen is that if you don't clean out the drainage channels or clean under the wheel arches properly, muck builds up, water collects, and they literally start rusting from the inside out. So very common, you'll see Mark 1s and Mark 2s in particular with sill repair sections here and here. That's a very, very common repair. Now, good news that the Deep Car team have discovered is that thankfully my car is pretty much rust free down here. And Dave from Deep Car, she says this is one of the least rusty Mark 1s he's ever actually worked on. So that is really encouraging, and it means that this car is hopefully worth the investment and worth saving. Unfortunately, in the way of bodywork repairs, in taking it apart, they have uncovered some less good news. That being that at some point in its life, this car has had a pretty hefty rear end shunt of some sort, and that whoever owned it at the time did a pretty shoddy repair in sorting it out. You can see here from the panel that Deep Car have removed that there's basically what's happened is they've welded a new section on the back here to repair the dent on the back, and it's just started to rust on the seam where they attach the two sections of bodywork. It's just a poor quality bodywork repair, and it shows why investing in a good job is worth doing, because this has basically come back to haunt the car. I knew it was there. I should have got it sorted out when I had the car repainted the first time, but there we go. What is going to be involved in the job now? Well, you can see that the whole wing has been removed here. Basically, the way they do that is they just drill out the spot welds, lift it off, and as I say, underneath you can see relatively rust-free, so that's good news. Where it gets less attractive is here in the back, where you can see that basically a new boot floor has been welded in. This section here, you can even see the red paint, you know, it was off a completely different car. So it's been a bit of a kind of a bodge job in the way, and that is unfortunately the reality of a lot of bodywork repairs that people do over the years. They're not always of the quality that they do down here at Deep Car. So it's a case of tidying up somebody else's mess, effectively. And it's quite a mess, because what happened is literally they'd welded on and then they've covered it with this horrible kind of bathroom sealant type stuff, and the bodywork has just rusted from behind, and you can see that here on the outside here that the metal's just flaking away. So this will need cutting out and new metal welding in. This section here, where they've just cut it and put a plate underneath, very crude repair. That'll need cutting out in a new section, putting in. So there's already, I think Dave said, about 2 or 3 days work involved in just getting the car this far, and quite a bit to do sorting out all these repairs. Once that's done, it gets hopefully a little bit easier, and it will be a case of ordering some new rear quarters from MX5 parts. Now these are original Mazda parts, so they fit much better than maybe the cheaper pattern ones you might see elsewhere. So we'll get those ordered, get them sent here to Deepcar, and the guys can see about welding them in place. So then we can see about painting it and getting it back to its former glory. I'm going to leave the guys to it and come back when they've got the parts, and we can see about what happens next.